healthcare system is broken, but it doesn't have to be. This is Revenue Cycle Optimized by Infinix Healthcare. We discuss the latest challenges in the revenue cycle space and provide actionable tips on how to overcome them at your organization.
Hi, everyone, and thanks for joining us. I'm David Byrd, filling in for Stuart Newsom, and I'm glad you're here. Today's session is going to be a little bit different. We're doing a live recap of 2025 AAOE conference, which just wrapped up this past week in Atlanta. It was a packed few days of sessions, networking, and hallway conversations, and we wanted to bring some of those highlights straight to you today. I'm joined by two fantastic guests, Lora Pada, AVP of Customer Success at Infinix, who works closely with orthopedic groups across the country and is heavily involved with AAOE, and Danelle Newman, Patient Access Director at OSS Health. We're going to walk through a few standout sessions, share some practical takeaways, and talk about what these trends mean to orthopedic practices in 2025. So let's dive in. Lora?
Well, first of all, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
All right. Well, let's get into it. One of the standout sessions for me was how data can be used to drive real decisions in orthopedic practices, not just for reporting, but for actual growth and operational change. One of our customers from Legacy Ortho had a great line. He said, use data to prove a point or defend a point. And that hit home for us. It's something we see every day. Our customers using performance metrics to justify workflows, improve efficiencies, or defend strategic decisions to leadership or partners. Danelle, I know that OSS Health is also very data-driven. Curious to hear if anything in this session or any other sessions reinforced or challenged your current approach.
I'll tell you a few things that really reinforce our approach. As some of you may be aware or not aware, we're opening a new location in our Good Hope Road location up in the West Shore in Harrisburg. And what we really did was we looked at the data to our patient population in that area to determine if the need was there for us to open another facility. So data really did drive that. It also drove for us the ability for us to see how many MRIs and CTs we were actually sending to some of our other facilities in the area to determine that we really had the need to put an MRI unit up in that area that we would be able to utilize for our patients. So I feel as though the data that really drove home to me. Another area that we currently have used data that said we're really reinforcing or doing the right things is we look at the data in our case cancellations. And, sometimes the provider's perception of why the case canceled really isn't the reality of why the case canceled. So we really drive into that data to understand where the variances are and what are things that we can do that will impact positively to have less case cancellation. So those were two things that I really thought that, what they were talking on really reinforced the things that we're doing here at OSS.
Cool. Thanks for that, Danelle. When you talk about data, obviously HIPAA comes into play in digital marketing. There was a lot of good information on the HIPAA and digital marketing session. Lora, any comments you have on that one?
Yeah, so there was a session called HIPAA and Digital Marketing Pitfalls. Obviously, HIPAA is a hot topic for any practice, not necessarily just orthopedics. But the speaker did call out some common HIPAA mistakes like replying to online reviews with too much detail or using unsecure online forms. So I appreciated her tips about forming best practices, such as keeping fields limited, not sending results via email, and auto-deleting submissions after a set time. So we sometimes assume compliance is handled by just IT or legal, but this is absolutely operational. Patient scheduling tools, intake forms, even chatbots have become a liability if not configured properly. Danelle, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, totally. I can appreciate that. Sometimes we do feel like it's just all handled by IT or our legal departments. One of the things that we currently are using here at OSS is we have an online appointment request on our website that patients can complete that gives some demographic information about them and is fired off to an email for our contact center to be able to reach back out to them. And that was one of the things that we had to work really closely with our marketing department to make sure that it was going to be HIPAA compliant, that the information that the patient is entering into the internet world is HIPAA compliant. And yeah, so that's one of the things that really kind of drove it home to me. I was like, yeah, we really need to be really conscious of the information that we are entering on the internet as a patient, and then also as a provider, the information that we're receiving from them.
So AAOE always has really quality sessions, but one of the ones that stood out to me was secrets from top performing practices, which it's not going to be so secret anymore. But this was based on AAOE's benchmark survey. And Danelle, I just wanted to know if you had any comments on that session.
When asked what they did to improve operations, one of the panelists said that they partnered with and negotiated better contracts and consolidated vendors. So a lot of times I feel like there's an opportunity, you have multiple different vendors and you maybe are spending more money, and a way for you to have a return on your investment is to kind of really look at how can you consolidate your vendors, get the most bang for your buck. Another one of the things that was brought up at that I thought was really interesting is also cross-training staff. That's huge. So if you have a newer clinic that you have providers that are working at, but you really don't have the ability to have multiple different staff members at that clinic to support that provider, they shared how they were able to cross-train the staff members that were there to not only register patients, but potentially room the patients, or the x-ray tech or the DME assistant maybe actually helping to room patients. So cross-training staff members was huge for them to improve some of the operations. Those were two things.
Actually, Danelle, remember you were talking about that session you attended about how millennials and the Gen Z audience and how, or actually the employees, and how they're basically training or not training them appropriately. And I still think that kind of goes into this topic.
Does. Yeah, right. Like the whole training piece of there are also staff members that are really hungry to learn other things. Mm-hmm. So it's a way to engage those staff members that they don't feel like they're stuck in a dead end job. Giving them that ability to be cross-trained adds value. They feel as though they're more wanted or needed than too. So agree, 100%.
How do you guys handle that there?
We do some cross-training. I would say it's more so on the clinical side of things that our DME fitters will room patients, or if we have an MA that is more just linked to our urgent care or our unscheduled patients, if there is a lull in those unscheduled patients, they might swap into another provider team and help room patients there. We don't do too much cross-training with patient access other than you may be typically are a check-in staff member or a check-out staff member, and you may be cross-trained to be able to do both of that, as well as maybe scheduling for HA injections or EMGs, things that would be outside of the norm of just scheduling follow-ups.
Yeah.
I know during that same session, there was discussion around AI as well. One of the panelists said that they haven't implemented AI because it can get partial information, but not all when it comes to scribes or authorizations. And from my standpoint, AI is here to augment specific tasks along the way. When you look at prior authorization, there's no way that software can automate that whole process, but AI can augment and assist the specialist that is working that prior authorization to streamline that process, increase or decrease turnaround times, and increase productivity. Lora, Danelle, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, 100%. I think that there were definitely members of AAOE who were a little bit leery of the AI process because of that, the start to finish. But I'm fully engaged and think that AI is very, very valuable, right? It allows us to have efficiencies, especially if you have solid standard work that you can build, in essence, a bot to do the actual step-by-step work. Why not, right? You're always going to have human touch. I hope you're always going to have human touch. A lot of people that won't have a job, right? But you're always going to have that human touch. You're going to have to make phone calls to patients and have that relationship. But where you can add value is that AI can do some of that behind the scene work that does not necessarily need to be human touch. And it still allows the human, the person on the team that's doing the work, to understand and recognize the value that the AI brings to not only their actual work, but to the volume of work that we can accomplish, in a smaller amount of time. So I'm all for
Yeah.
it.
It's all about, staffing augmentation, right? So the AI is going to help. It's not going to solve all problems. We know that payers won't let you fully everything. So, but it can make you more efficient. It can help somewhat, but you always need humans.
Right. 100%.
So let's shift gears for our last thing. And we touched on this a little bit, but one of the most talked about sessions on Sunday was Don Harkey's keynote on workforce transformation. He called it the perfect storm, actually. The reality that millennials are rapidly replacing baby boomers in leadership roles across the healthcare industry. In fact, he shared a really interesting statistic that by the end of this year, 71% of business to business decision makers will be millennials or Gen Z. That stat alone should make all of us rethink how we're hiring, mentoring, and managing our teams. Laura, I know you're working directly with younger operational leaders every single day. What do you think of Don's meeting?
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, just from an Infinix perspective, as well as seeing it with our customers, there's a lot of young Gen Z eager to learn, but it's up to the millennials to coach them and teach them. And sometimes there's a conflict for sure. But for the most part, our younger operation leaders that's our next generation. And they're the ones going to be leading these groups. It's important that they're trained correctly and then the knowledge is transferred over. I don't know, Danelle, what do you think about that? I know we talked about it already, but I mean, we had lengthy conversations about this in our booth.
Yeah. I also think too that the millennials and the Gen Zs are way more open to change and not
Yes.
resistant to change, right?
Absolutely.
So we talk through, not only are they eager to learn, they want to learn, they're hungry for that. They have the ability to gain those skills and be good leaders. They do need, the older generation to kind of show them the work, but they can run circles around us sometimes. I say us, right?
Yeah.
Oh, right. But I do really think that they're looking for changes in the environment too. Like they want that work-life balance. And, some of the things that we really need to look at and we've really honed in on is people own what they create and help create, and that makes it meaningful for them. So some of these younger generations, right? If they are part of the process of change or they're creating new workflows or new operations, right? They own that, and that they see that as bringing value. And I think that we can't say enough and do enough to help build that skill set because we need them on our team. We need the new eyes, the new leaders,
New ideas.
people that are not narrow-minded. This is how we do it. This is why we do it. We've always done it this way. I'm even seeing that with our shareholders. Some of our older shareholders, as they retire and there's new providers that take shareholder interest in OSS, right? They too are in that younger generation and open to and receptive to changes and even work-life balance. Like, days that they are in the clinic, they might have really, really long days in the clinic, but then they have days where they want to have a short schedule because they want to make sure that they too get out and have an opportunity to spend time with their families. And I think it's a change in mindset operationally, but there's value added in that. I'll just use another example of something that we've done in our organization. Our pre-surgery appointments, patients that are coming in for H&Ps, like their physical before their surgery, we used to just have them scheduled between like 8 and 4, right? People who are working, they don't want to take off a whole day before surgery just to have a 20-minute history and physical. So we start our history and physicals at 6 o'clock in the morning now, so that patients can come in before their visit, before their work day, and still be able to have that work-life balance. So not only are we utilizing it in our operation side, but we really are trying to be proactive instead of reactive to what the needs of our patients are.
Those are some really good points. It's been a big shift for sure, but one we can prepare for. And the practices that do are the ones that will stay competitive, like you're mentioning, Danelle. So thanks for that. Really helpful to hear how the session's connected to the work you're already doing at OSS Health. But before we head into the Q&A session, I just wanted to ask you both, did anything on the exhibit hall floor catch your eye, like a photo booth doing headshots or anything?
Danelle, how many headshots did you get?
It came every day for different headshots, different outfits, my hair done differently. Right?
Yeah, it was great.
So those that didn't get to attend AAOE, and unfortunately, Infinix sponsored a photo booth for headshots for LinkedIn or whatever you want to use it for. So that was one interesting thing that was on the exhibit hall floor. But anything else, Lora, Danelle?
No, I mean, it was a great conference.
It really was a great conference. I will say a little bit about one of the other things that I think was important about the vendor hall is it does give you an opportunity to network, right? Coming in from the patient access angle, when you go to a conference like this, there's so many vendors that have great things that some of them add value to me and others maybe add value to some of my peers here in the organization. And so, spending time to just kind of wander around the exhibit hall and get to meet and greet other people and be able to take some of those things home to be able to share with my colleagues here and say, hey, are you familiar with this company? Or, hey, are you familiar with that company? Or the opportunity to be like, hey, checking with other providers or offices that are there to be like, are you using them? Are you happy with them? Has it been successful in your transition? I think that's another thing that's good about the vendor halls too.
Yeah. And too, when you go to these sessions, a lot of them start talking about the vendors. What vendors are you using? What do they do for you? What's working well? What doesn't work well?
100% in there. Yeah. And that is true, right? So if you are building a good relationship and you have a good relationship with those vendors and you're on the panel or it comes to the question and answer time, in those meetings, there's value added in that too, in those meetings.
So we do have a question from the audience, and it pertains back to the millennial Gen Z. And I think, Danelle, you kind of touched on this, but the question is, how are you seeing younger staff influence decision-making or change management inside practices today?
I feel it goes back to that they're not as narrow-minded, right? They have an open mind to process improvement, and they will do a job, but they want to know the why, and they want to see the value that it adds. And if there isn't something that's bringing or adding value, and they see that there's a value add opportunity, they're vocal about it, as they should be, right? And so as an organization, it's important for us to allow them the space and the time to be able to communicate that and not let it fall on deaf ears. And so we've done a really good job. I'm sure that we can do way more, but having those huddles, leader rounding, the opportunity for our staff members to have conversations with C-suite leaders to say, hey, this is what I think we should do, or did you think about this? And having open-minded C-suite leaders or shareholders that are, again, open to and receptive to potential changes in operations. I hope that answers it.
A good answer. So before we wrap up, because we're coming up on time, and I guess this question is for both of you. If you had to summarize 2025 AAOE in one sentence or takeaway, what would it be? So now we'll start with you first. I gotcha.
Actually, not being able to talk very often, huh? Right? I'd probably say inspiring or refreshing, like revitalizing, right? Like some of the things that we're doing, it was like, wow, okay, we're there. We're eye-opening. We're right there with, thought on the needle with everybody else. And there's other areas where I was like, okay, we have some room for growth and room for improvement. But you take that home, you're focused, you're driven, now it's like, don't let the momentum stop, right? Continue to use what you've learned to be successful when you take it home.
And Lora?
There's a lot. I mean, we got to, it's great to network with not only new people, but we have so many clients that are there. So it's great to be in one place.
I agree. It was great. It was a great conference. So that's a wrap. We've answered some of the audience's questions, and to our audience, and Lora, Danelle, thank you for participating and you joining today, and hope we have a great rest of your day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us. Subscribe to get notified when our next episode is online. For more information for how we can help you increase reimbursements at your company, check out our website at infinix.com. That's INFINX.com.